So this happened a few months ago. I'm a sophomore in college and was traveling down to my hometown over break. I was having some relationship issues with my stepmom, so I didn't want to stay at my dad's house that night. I arrived soon after in my hometown. I phoned a friend of mine from high school to ask if I could stay at his place. I knew them from social media, and I knew he was still in town. I've stayed there before. I knew it would be a good place for me to stay if they would allow it. So my friend, let's call him Z, seemed like a pretty normal dude. We weren't like best friends or anything, but we got pretty close by the time we'd graduated. We would occasionally text or hang out if I was actually in town, catch up and reminisce on times that we'd spent in orchestra or in English class together. When I called, he seemed extremely enthusiastic. Z's a normally upbeat guy, but this time, it seemed like he was getting a brand new car or something. I didn't really think about it in the time, and he said I could sleep in the guest room, so I headed over there. When I got to his house, he was just as excited as he was on the phone. He was bringing up stuff to do like getting high and watching weird movies or just playing some video games. Z's parents weren't home, so we really wanted the opportunity to smoke. I was actually pretty tired from the drive, but since we rarely saw one another, I thought a little bit of bonding couldn't hurt. We played Smash Bros, smoked some weed, and just chatted for a few hours. It lasted a little longer than I wanted to, but we were having fun, so whatever, right? By the time it was getting really late, I'd say around 2 a.m., he started asking me some pretty weird questions, like if I ever wondered what it was like to kill someone, or if I thought anyone would miss me if I was gone. He asked me this along some other normal questions, like if I had a boyfriend, or how my parents are doing, or if I'm making any friends at school. It all gave me a really weird feeling, and I was definitely confused in the moment. But it didn't really hit me until after that Z could be assessing me for something bad. The weirdness of it all just made me want to go to bed. I ended up stopping the game and both went to the basement where his room is and the guest room was. We say goodnight, and I go to my room and get ready for bed. I'm having some trouble sleeping, just insomnia that I've had for a while, so I stay awake for around an hour or so, until I hear movement outside of my room. The walls in the basement were pretty thin, so I could hear footsteps walking past my door, and then up the stairs to the main floor, and back down quietly after that. What struck me as odd was that I didn't hear the basement door open, which creaked when it did. The light didn't turn on either, so I was confused on what Z was actually doing. I then heard him go back to his room. I had this odd feeling, just ever since I met him this night, he seemed a lot different than he's ever been. I decided to look him up on social media and just Googled to see if there was anything out of the ordinary. Everything seemed normal until I found his Tumblr, which was linked from his inactive Twitter account that I found on my Twitter contact list. His Tumblr was, well, disturbing. There were graphic drawings of mutilated bodies of humans and animals. There was links to suspicious-looking websites that I didn't dare to click on. There was text posts and stories about murdering, cannibalism, necrophilia, and torture. There were photos of guns and knives and axes, which after looking closely, were definitely taken inside of his bedroom. The last post, around a week prior, was a text post from the account saying he wished he could find somebody easy to kill, like a homeless person or something. I was immediately filled with dread. I knew he was going to do something. He must have gone upstairs to lock the door. I packed up my things, and luckily I packed lightly. Opened up this small window at the top of my bedroom's wall. I started desperately climbing through. As I was pulling my legs through, he opened the door. It was dark, but the streetlight illuminated enough for me to see that he was carrying something long and skinny. Probably a knife. He didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I just turned around and hopped back in my car and drove as fast as I could to my dad's house. I immediately blocked him on everything and reported that Tumblr account, not before telling the police as well. They told me they couldn't do anything, as the guns were registered under his dad, and he hasn't actually done anything yet. Nevertheless, I told my other high school friends not to hang out with Z. Ever since then, I've been creeped out whenever I meet new people. Just the realization that someone I knew so well could underneath be this person who could hurt me, who could have killed me. I don't know what you're doing now, Z. I'm not sure I want to know, but I really hope you're getting help. I'm currently a sophomore in college, and the bar scene here is pretty big. Going out for the night to get some special deals on alcohol so you can get plastered with your friends is kind of the go-to here. Despite this, I'm not a huge drinker and don't enjoy it a lot because it tastes so bad and hurts my stomach. I do enjoy the company though, and I often just go out to be with my friends or meet new people. A lot of the times I'm called the dad of the group because I end up just taking care of all of them all the time. That's the prelude to what happened when I decided to go out with them one Friday night. So we all get dressed up, pre-gaming a bit at my friend Q's apartment before we Ubered downtown to one of our pretty well-known college bars and clubs. After we got in, my friends immediately split off into tiny groups, combing over the bar for girls they wanted to try their shot at spending the night with. This is going to make me sound weird, but one-night stands aren't really my thing, and I don't want to end up blocking my friends. So instead of looking for girls, I usually find someone at the bar and just make friends with them. I was chatting with some dude that was wearing a cowboy hat, when eventually, a girl approached me. She was pretty cute, probably 5'6" with dirty blonde hair, and eyes that I think were light brown. But they were so light that they almost looked gold, which threw me off a bit. She asked if she could buy me some drinks in exchange for being her friend for the night. And I, of course, accepted because, hey, that's what I came here for anyway, right? Anyways, she kept to her word. We started talking to one another and she introduced herself as Alexia, but to call her Alex. I asked her some basic stuff about herself, if she came with friends and if she went to college here, to which all the answers were no. That struck me as pretty odd, because honestly it's pretty unsafe to be in the downtown area, especially alone as a girl at like 1 a.m. She kept asking to hear about me though, and actually seemed pretty excited to listen. It felt like a really nice change of pace because usually I'm the one learning about other people, not the other way around. It also could have been the alcohol starting to take effect since I'm a pretty big lightweight, as like I said, I don't binge drink a lot. The whole time I was talking, she stared into my eyes and had this warm smile that made me feel so acknowledged, if that makes any sense. I felt like she was enjoying her time as much as I was, and that just made me even happier because I thought I made a new friend. That was when her demeanor began to change though. She started to get kind of flirty and eventually asked if I wanted to go home with her. Like I said earlier, I'm not a one-night stand kind of guy. I explained that I like to get to know people a little better before sleeping with them. I'm pretty sure I saw what I thought was anger flash across her face, but was quickly replaced with another smile, and then she suggested just going home and watching a movie instead. I agreed, and then pulled out my phone to begin ordering an Uber. She basically grabbed my wrist and started guiding me outside. I was confused, trying to ask if she was planning to drive after drinking, but she wouldn't really give me an answer. We eventually got outside the club, and she pointed to a black Honda Civic parked right at the front of the club. That was when all the warning bells rang out like a tornado had passed through them. I was pretty drunk at this point in the night, maybe 6 or 7 drinks deep, but I was still aware enough to see those red flags. She said she'd come alone, but the lane the car was parked in was only for pickups. I never saw her order an Uber. Someone would have had to have been driving that car. This was enough to make me uncomfortable, and I asked again if she was planning to drive. She said yes as we continued to walk closer and closer, and I knew that it was a bald-faced lie. As we got closer, my heart sank as I noticed the outline of 3 other guys inside that car. At that point, my adrenaline kicked in. I yanked my hand away from her and said, "There's no way in hell I'm getting in that car with you." She tried begging me one more time, saying she really wanted to have sex and would let me do whatever I wanted, but I'd already turned around and walked back into the club. She started cussing me out, practically screaming at the top of her lungs as I walked back up to the bouncers to go back inside. I texted my friends about what had happened, and we all met back up and went home. It was obvious that she was going to college bars, trying to get guys drunk before offering to sleep with them, so she could get them inside that car with those other 3 men, to rob them or do God knows what else. I called my city's anonymous tip line, and left a detailed description of the car, the girl, and the place where it all happened. That night was a real wake-up call for me. I'm so thankful that despite being drunk that night, I was able to piece together what was happening before it was too late. Please, remember to always be safe when going out with your friends, especially when it's late at night or alcohol is involved. But to Alexia, or Alex, who I saw that night at the bar, let's never meet again. My biggest mistake in high school was agreeing to take this AP physics class with the seniors. I was a sophomore at the time, so when I walked into the class with the kids much older than I was, my teacher sat me next to the only other person that was even close to my age. He was a freshman and his name was Josh. Josh was one of those people who just gave off weird vibes. He had a sloppily shaven head, empty eyes, and ate warm Skittles in class. He was short and mean looking, and the instant I sat down next to him, my teacher ordered us to exchange numbers and tried to start making us talk. For some reason, I really did not want to talk to him. I wasn't really trying to be an asshole, he just scared me. Sitting next to him felt like what I can only describe as sitting next to a hungry dog while you're holding a piece of chicken. It felt like any second, he would jump on me, even though he was a good 6 inches shorter than I. It really freaked me out that he now had my name and phone number. Even though I didn't even know the kid, I had a feeling that him, knowing literally anything about me, is not a good thing. Luckily, he didn't talk to me for over a week, and after some time, I thought I was just being maybe overly judgmental about him. He was just a socially awkward kid, right? One day, about 3 weeks after I started that class with him, he talked to me. He said something like, "You're that girl that drives the F-150, right?" And I reluctantly said, "Yeah." He then told me that cars were a hobby of his. He'd seen me driving and liked my truck. Even though I was caught a bit off guard, he seemed innocent and nice. So we did kind of become friends after that. He started texting me a lot after school, asking me a bit about myself and sharing a bit about himself too. Like I said, it seemed innocent. I still couldn't shake that feeling that I shouldn't be telling him anything about myself, and I definitely should not be talking to him. The average conversation continued for a month or so, till one day when I came home from work. I worked at a restaurant about 20 minutes away from my house, so when I turned off my phone to drive to work, I honestly wouldn't turn it back on until I drove back home, as phones were prohibited at the restaurant. So one weekend I came home at like 12 a.m. after doing a closing shift, and he did send me several odd text messages. They all consisted of, "I love you, and I want to take you to homecoming. Be my girlfriend." Don't rub me the wrong way. He didn't seem to be really asking as much as he was demanding me to have a relationship with him, and I definitely wasn't comfortable with that. I ultimately friend-zoned him and told him that I was going to bed. His response was, no. Just no. It freaked me out. It made me really not want to go to class on Monday, but I had no choice. I had to go. He didn't text me for the rest of the weekend. When I sulked into class on Monday, he gave me that same hungry dog stare from day one. I ignored him the whole class. I practically ran when the bell rang, and when I got to my car in the student parking lot, I saw him watch me drive away from the sidewalk. It freaked me out more than I'd like to admit, so I called one of my guy friends and asked him if I could drive him home from school so that I'd feel safer until creepy Josh would be less creepy. He agreed, and we made an arrangement from there. A lot of people thought that I was overreacting, but I just knew in my gut that I needed to have someone in the car with me, and this guy friend seemed like the right one. When I came home from work at 10-ish Monday night, I opened up my phone and saw more text messages from Josh. This time, they were much more predatory than the night before, as that night, they were detailing how he'd like me to perform sexual acts on him. I foolishly allowed this to happen for another couple of weeks, still feeling uncomfortable in class when he finally hit a breaking point. Josh started sending me texts about how if I wouldn't love him, he had to die. At that point, I decided it was time to involve the dean. She virtually did nothing. She basically explained that Josh was special needs and cut him some slack. Despite the predatory tone of the messages, she told me that she would talk to him about it, but not to worry because he likely wouldn't do anything. I was infuriated and told my dad, who told his army of Italian brothers, who all decided to keep an eye on him. Those creepy messages didn't get any worse, and eventually they stopped after I blocked his number. That was when the creepy shit really started. The cameras outside our house kept picking up a person at night. Someone very similar looking to Josh. This person kept knocking on the windows, looking into my car. My dad called the cops, who were actually awesome, kept a lookout on the house for a while to deter the nightly visits. The cop outside at night, those visits stopped, and my work started getting phone calls from Josh asking if I was working. My manager ended up alerting security, who threatened him to stop calling. Then, Josh decided to start frequenting the restaurant where I worked every day, and leave paper cranes on the table saying, "I love you," with my name, and "My new boyfriend's name isn't good for you. I am." He started following me to class, to my car, to work, even though I pretended that he wasn't there, and I was still driving my 6'3" guy friend home. I refused to leave my house without a group of people, and debated skipping prom, slowly becoming a hermit because he just made me feel so unsafe everywhere I went. Eventually, my dad decided a restraining order would be a good idea, and I did get one granted so he couldn't walk near me or contact me for 5 years. Thankfully, this finally caused the year-long nightmare to stop. I didn't see Josh again until my senior year when I was walking down the hall with my friends, and he saw me coming. He stopped in his tracks and slowly watched me walk past him with that same hungry dog look that initially scared me the day I met him. You're probably wondering why he never got into any trouble when I contacted the dean and the police. Well, where I live, there's a bunch of laws that make it exponentially harder for someone with special needs to be punished for creepy behavior, even though they're just as capable to execute their behavior as the average person. The last time I saw Josh was on graduation, and I could have sworn he was in one of the front rows, waiting for me to get my diploma. Although it is possible that he was there for someone else, a part of me knows he was there for me. If there's one thing I have learned from all of this, it's that it can happen to anyone. I never thought this would happen to me until it did. It robbed me of my safety, of my high school experience, and peace of mind. Always trust your instincts on someone. You are not required to be nice to anyone who makes you uncomfortable. That leads me to now. I'm happy. I'm in a serious relationship with an awesome guy. And in a weird way, I'm glad I was able to learn from this whole experience. So did Josh from that AP physics class. Let's never ever meet again.